This video tutorial will provide you the functionalities of the Office Setup, which is located under the Software toolbar under Setup. After watching this video, you will be able to identify the functionalities of the Registration tab, the Electronic Filing tab, the Overrides tab, the Defaults tab, the Authorization Audit tab, and the Text Message tab. When you select the Office Setup, the Registration tab will be the first tab that will be displayed. You will see pre-populated information displayed in the Registration section. It is recommended that you contact a customer support manager before changing these settings. Changing the settings could have an effect on how your software communicates with the Electronic Filing Center. If there is no pre-populated information in the Registration section, you need to contact a customer support manager to ensure your software is set up properly. Most of this information will appear from entries made during installation. The Transmitting Computer section gives you a drop-down menu of 3 choices. Transmit is selected if this computer will be transmitting directly to the Electronic Filing Center. The transfer method is no longer supported by AccuTax. Your transmitting computer should never be set to transfer. And Feeder. If Feeder is selected, you have to opt into the Return Retrieval feature during the software enrollment process. By selecting Feeder, you will transmit directly to the central site and be placed in a queue before being transmitted to the Electronic Filing Center. To learn more about the Return Retrieval function, visit the AccuTax University Library and watch the Return Retrieval video, or contact a customer support manager to learn more about this feature. If you want to have all of your incompleted returns transmitted to the central site, you will check the Transfer Incomplete box. This is a great feature in the event of data loss due to computer crashes, etc. By selecting the Incompleted Return box, this will give AccuTax the ability to restore all of your incompleted returns. There may be a fee associated with restoring your data. The Receipt Numbers section. You can enable the software to require that all of your invoices are assigned a receipt number by selecting the required box. If you want the AccuTax software to auto-assign receipt numbers, select the Auto-Assign box. The Receipt Range gives you the ability to have 2 different receipt ranges to correspond to your own accounting system. If you leave these fields blank, AccuTax will start your receipt number at 1. The Verification Settings section will allow you to set the error level for which you will not be able to transmit to the central site or Electronic Filing Center. Fatal Errors is the default setting. A fatal error is one that prevents the return from being accepted by the IRS. Errors above warning includes errors that occur when a calculated field has been overridden by the user. All errors and warnings includes errors that occur when any field has been overridden, including those that are not necessarily relevant to the actual tax return calculations. You can choose whether to display the warning and override error types by selecting either the Display Warning and/or the Display Error box. The display of warning errors will be reviewable when you have verified a return before queuing it up to be transmitted. The Appointment Address section. If you click on Appointment Address, it will open up the Appointment Address window, asking for your appointment address. This is the address that will print out on your appointment letters and may already be pre-populated with your company information. If not, you can enter your company information. If you are finished with the Registration tab, click OK, or select the Electronic Filing tab to continue with the Office Setup. For additional help in filling out the Registration tab, click on the Help button to get assistance. Electronic Filing tab. The Electronic Filing tab allows you to set the settings for electronically filing your tax returns in AccuTax. This information is used to auto-populate the data entry fields onto the Form 8879, the IRS e-file signature authorization, and the electronic bank application. The default EFIN field is used if your office only uses one EFIN. The IRS teletax number is built in by default. If this number changes throughout the tax season, you will be notified by AccuTax to change this phone number. The default SBIN, which stands for Service Bureau Identification Number, is a number provided by the IRS. If you do not have an SBIN, leave this field blank. New York and Maine have certain laws required when it comes to cross-collection of bank debts. To see how the law will affect your customers if they select a refund settlement bank product, contact your state tax agency. and/or the refund settlement bank that you are using. By selecting this option, you will disable the bank collection checks. Discard acknowledgments letters. Select this box if you do not want to generate acknowledgment letters from the IRS. Auto-generate PINs will automatically generate the personal identification numbers on the Form 8879. A PIN is needed for the taxpayer and spouse to sign the form. If auto-generate is not enabled, you will have to manually enter a PIN for the taxpayer and spouse when completing the return. If you want the tax return status for your bank products to stay as acknowledged for bank products, this option will not change the tax return status from acknowledged to completed. The status of a return can be found when you are searching for a return by the lookup or quick function on the software toolbar. You cannot prompt AccuTax to file the taxpayer state returns electronically either. Always, when required, or never, depending from the choice you selected from the drop-down list. If you are finished with the Electronic Filing tab, click OK, or select the Overrides tab to continue with the office setup. For additional help in filling out the Electronic Filing tab, click on the Help button to get assistance. Overrides tab. This information is optional. If you fill out this section, it will override any of the information that you have created in the database pertaining to the ERO and company information set up under the paid preparers. This information will always appear on Forms 1040 and the Form 8879, so that it cannot be altered. If multiple EROs and paid preparers will be using the AccuTax program, you will not want to enter any information here. If the fields here are left blank, the ERO and company information will be pulled from the database. The Site ID section. If you fill out this section, it will override any site identifiers that you have created in the database under Site Identifiers. The Site ID is great if you have a multi-office setup, and at the end of tax season you are importing your tax returns from all locations to have all returns in a central location. In that scenario, you will leave this field blank and select the required box to have the Site ID on all tax returns from your multi-office. This is helpful when running reports. The Auto Add State Return section allows you to automatically add a state return to the federal tax return. You can auto-add by selecting the choices from the drop-down list. The Client Data screen will automatically add a state from the address that was inputted on the Client Data screen. If ERO specified is selected, then you must select the default state to be loaded with each federal return. If you select Disable Auto Add, then you must manually add the state for each federal return. If you select Add a State Return based on a W-2, AccuTax will automatically add every state to the federal return based on the W-2 that was inputted. The default taxpayer's phone number can be set to the work, home, or cell phone number. This is the number that will display when running reports pertaining to the taxpayer. If you are finished with the Overrides tab, click OK, or select the Defaults tab to continue with the office setup. For additional help in filling out the Overrides tab, click on the Help button to get assistance. Defaults tab. Similar to the Overrides tab, this tab allows you to set default information and is also optional. The defaults you can set from this screen are Required Preparation Fee. You will select this option if your office requires a preparation fee for processing a return. Enable Return Owner Lock. Selecting this default will lock a return so only the originator of this return or a user with admin rights in AccuTax can view the return. Auto Add Filing Options. By selecting this option, the filing page will automatically be added to the return. The filling options give you a fee comparison of a return if the return was IRS e-filed or bank filed. Referral Required. By selecting this option, it will require that the referral section on the Client Data screen be filled out on every return. Selecting the Jump Cursor past City, State option will jump the cursor past the city, state fields on the Client Data screen and go directly to the zip code field. Once the zip code has been entered, the city and state will auto-populate. Selecting Use Window Login Name, AccuTax no longer supports this option. Do not enable this feature. By selecting Allow Only Full 1040 Returns, this will disable the ability to prepare Forms 1040EZ and 1040A. By selecting Double Entry Validation, it will enable some fields such as bank account and bank routing numbers, requiring a double entry to ensure the numbers were not mistyped. By selecting the Set Finished Returns Read Only will set a return to a lock status when the return does not have a Form 8879 attached, and the Print Final return has been selected. By default, AccuTax will pull forward certain information for the prior years, W-2, 1099, and documents. To disable the year-to-year transfer for each client's W-2, 1099, and document, select this option. If you plan on doing a state RAC, it is best to have this setting to Yes. If you leave this field blank or select No, you will have to manually select the state RAC on each bank application. By selecting Silently Save Return on Close will save any changes made to a return when it is closed without prompting. To auto-save your returns while working on the return without manually saving the return, input a desired time in this field provided. The Check System Clock with USNO will auto-check your computer clock with U.S. Naval Observatory if you select this option. The font set will allow you to increase or decrease the size of the fonts in the software depending on what is most comfortable for your viewing eyes. You must restart the AccuTax software for this change to take effect. The prior year path is where you have the previous year AccuTax installed. You can either type in the prior year path or you can choose Browse to locate it. If your client's information is not pulling forward from year to year, browse and locate the drive you have AccuTax installed on, and select the X-Link folder. Make sure you are selecting the correct year's folder. If you are retrieving tax returns, you can set a default retrieval path by manually entering it in, or browse to set one. AccuTax will automatically retrieve the returns from this location by default. If you need to transfer tax returns, you can set the transfer path by manually entering it in, or browse to set a default location to transfer the returns. AccuTax will automatically transfer the returns to this location by default. In the Backup section, you can enable backups by selecting Enable Backup and by inputting a backup path here manually, or browsing to set a location. You must have the backup feature added to your software package, and a backup path must be set up in order to use the function. To default to 1040 or Business Billing Scheme to reflect your invoice, select from the drop-down list. You must first set up a billing scheme in order to have a billing scheme defaulted. If you have more than one billing scheme, you can leave this blank and select the billing scheme from the invoice. If you are finished with the Defaults tab, click OK, or select the Authorization Audits tab to continue with the Office setup. For additional help in filling out the Default tab, click on the Help button to get assistance. Authorization and Audits tab. The Authorization section will already be pre-populated with the authorization codes. Only manually enter the authorization codes if instructed by a customer support manager. Tax Return Audits. AccuTax has implemented this feature to assist you with the IRS regulatory validation. You can configure the AccuTax validation checks to assist you with being in compliance with the IRS. However, this tool is only a help tool, and it does not prevent you from being audited as a tax professional. If you are finished with the Authorization Audits tab, click OK, or select the Text Messaging tab to continue with the Office setup. For additional help in filling out the Authorization Audits tab, click on the Help button to get assistance. Text Messaging tab. In order to have the text messaging feature enabled, you must have purchased this feature. Contact a customer support manager to go over the mail and advanced settings. If you are finished with the Text Messaging tab, click OK. For additional help in filling out the Text Messaging tab, click on the Help button to get assistance. After watching this video, you should be able to understand the Office setup. Check out our many in-depth training video tutorials in the AccuTax University Library.